So welcome to Thangka number 14, second to the last. So this Thangka covers Tsongkhapa's life from the age of 58 to 62. The first event, right directly at the bottom of this Thangka, is Tsongkhapa meeting one of his most important and later one of his most famous disciples. His name is Gelwa Genden Drup. Actually, he's posthumously recognized as the first of the Dalai Lamas. So the current Dalai Lama is the 14th in the line of reincarnations of the Dalai Lama. Actually, he was given that name Dalai Lama by the Mongol Emperor Altan Khan, who's the grandson of Genghis Khan, during the life of the third Dalai Lama, who actually went to Mongolia and taught extensively. So this person, Gelwa Genden Drup, who met Tsongkhapa at that time, like quite late in his life, Gelwa Genden Drup went on to later found Tashi Lumpo Monastery, which became one of the most important, influential study centers in the Buddhist and the Geluk tradition in Tsang in Tibet. Later on, and then he continues to work for the welfare of sentient beings until now. So that's what's happening right at the bottom. Tsongkhapa's meeting Gelwa Genden Drup. And right during that meeting already, many people recognized this person, Gelwa Genden Drup, as a very important and gifted and talented kind of practitioner. Then the next image is Tsongkhapa's teaching extensively on Tantra. You see, I think an image of, looks like Manjushri, I believe there. Then there's a row of stupas, white stupas. So there, one of Tsongkhapa's main disciples and friends, Dokten Jampo Gyatso, he had a dream in which he saw one large stupa surrounded by many white stupas. And in the dream, Manjushri told him that Tsongkhapa and 7 of his foremost disciples that Tsongkhapa in that very life could achieve enlightenment, and that 7 of his most fortunate disciples could also achieve very high levels of realization, approaching enlightenment. Then just above that you see a great temple. A large temple filled with tantric deities. So it said at this time Tsongkhapa was teaching Tantra and composing extensive texts on different tantric, different tantras and their root commentaries at Ganden during that time. And Tsongkhapa recognized that because they're doing many tantric practices, the monks of Ganden were doing many tantric practices together as a community. Tsongkhapa recognized that, and for that they need statues and mandalas and different offerings laid out. So Tsongkhapa recognized that many lay people also were coming to visit the monastery. If they came into the main temple and saw all these mandalas and tantric deities without having had initiation, actually they create a lot of obstacles to their own realization, and they can create a lot of negative karma. So he had the sense, so he felt that they need a separate prayer hall for doing tantric practices, especially exclusively, where not just anybody could go. So then he proposed that to his disciples, and then they began the construction of this great tantric prayer hall at Ganden called Yangpajen. So that took place over probably the next 2 or 3 years. They called all the best artisans of the time, and especially they constructed, I think, 3 or 4 three-dimensional mandalas. And to do so, Tsongkhapa and his disciples, they went back to the root tantras to know exactly the right proportions and dimensions of each of the mandalas and how to construct each of the deities. So it said that they had incredibly beautiful and inspiring and powerful holy objects. And then further around the Thangka, when Tsongkhapa, I think it's probably up at the top left-hand side is this, at the completion, when they completed constructing the temple and the holy objects inside, then they had a huge consecration ceremony. At that time, many people, Tsongkhapa and many others, saw deities actually appearing in the space above and absorbing into the holy objects. It said that one of the Yamantaka statues and some of the other statues, at the heart there was like warmth. The statue had warmth, and actually when the Yamantaka statue, that the tongue and the mouth was like wet with saliva, as if it's a real living being, even though of course it's a statue made of gold and silver and so forth. Then further around at the top right hand of the Thangka, you see many wrathful deities, Mahakala and Kalarupa and other wrathful deities. So during this time it said Tsongkhapa had visions of dakinis, dakas and dakinis, and also these different protector deities. So he heard while he was composing and practicing composing texts, doing practices related especially to Heruka, Chakra He heard the songs of Dakinis, and based on this, he wrote down. There's one famous prayer that we do during Lama Tsongkhapa offering called "Song of the Spring Queen." So this is a prayer, and the tune, even the tune, comes from Tsongkhapa's pure vision of Dakinis appearing in space. And then there's some other prayers that he received from Mahakala and Kalarupa, some of the other Dharma protectors, that Tsongkhapa heard, then wrote down, and are still used to this day in the Geluk tradition. Then Tsongkhapa is giving more extensive teachings, and then I think at the bottom right of this Thangka, Tsongkhapa is invited to go to Tolung. Tolung is a place near Lhasa in central Tibet where there's famous hot springs. So some of Tsongkhapa's disciples tell him, in order for you to benefit your health, it might help you to go to Tolung and soak in the hot springs. And Tsongkhapa has many disciples there, and also he knows that he's coming to the end of his life, and he wishes to visit the main temple, and especially the Choe statue, the famous statue of Shakyamuni Buddha in Lhasa, for one last time. So together with a group of his disciples, he sets out for Lhasa in central Tibet. First he goes to visit and make prayers at the Choe statue in Lhasa. So you see Shakyamuni Buddha there. And then just to the left of that, you see in a cloud a group of other deities. Okay, so you see just towards the bottom of that statue, the very bottom there's a tent. So that's Tsongkhapa traveling with his disciples, camping out. And then just to the left and above that, there's a cloud with a bunch of different deities sort of in a cloud. So it said that when Tsongkhapa was at Tolung, at one particular place, he had a vision of many different aspects of the Guya Samaja, one Buddhist deity, and those absorbed into a courtyard there. And Tsongkhapa predicted that in the future there would be a monastery there where they studied and practiced Guya Samaja Tantra. So that concludes the 14th Thangka.